everyone, and welcome back to this video. So this video is going to be me giving about my speech about how I came to the making of Sheldina. The upcoming feature film is going to be released on Saturday the 18th of July, and today is currently Wednesday the 8th of July, so within the next 10 days the film is going to be released worldwide. And I'm making this video giving my speech about how I came to make the film. So we are going to go back and I'll explain to you how I came to make this film. So I wanted to share with all of you how I came to make this film, and unlike the last one, it was based on something a lot of us knew, and this one here is completely original, so something we're not familiar with. And what is it about? And so the film is basically meant to be based on a project which I started when I did my level 2 art course when I was in college, and that was around September 2023. So I will take you all on a journey about how I came to make this film and how I got inspired with other filmmakers and directors along the way. September 2023, when I started my level 2 art course, the first project we got assigned with was a film theme course, which really grabbed my interest. And I was developing it in my sketchbook, and I had to create a little mind map about it, and the main project of the film was called The Experiment, and I was ready to take mine further and develop it further. So I went with characters, giving them names, and that's when I started naming the characters. The two names that popped into my head were Sheldon and Tina, and I decided to get a little creative. So for the two main characters, that's what I decided to name them. But I also had a little think to myself, like, what if I combine the two names together? So that's what I did, and I wrote the two names down together, and that's when I got Sheldina. And I liked that name, thought it was quite catchy. And I showed the tutors my name, they really liked it as well, and they thought it was really creative, so they let me call it that. I was ready to start working on the project. How did I know that I would be making it with animation style? Well, at first, I didn't know it was going to be done using an animation style. The original plan was to shoot it with my classmates as a live action feature, and having my classmates play some of the characters as well. I was going to use a combine of animation and live action to experiment with it, as what the course was based on. I wanted to take those skills and experiment with it further, but instead the plans got changed and the film went from being a live action to an animation feature. So I just went with it, and I was there thinking, like, how can I make this an animated feature? But at the time I was also still working on another animated feature which was coming close to a release, which was just a couple of months away. And I wanted to get that out of the way first, which was around early 2024. So it was just finished, every little detail on that one, and it was ready for the release. And when I got to using that spare time I had, I started shooting Sheldina, which was around mid-March. I didn't know how the animation style was going to be, so I just had a little think, and I got the chance to actually start working on it. And since the project was based on The Experiment, I decided I could use both animation and live action in certain sequences. But what kind of animation style did I use? Well, I could have gone with the hand-drawn style, but for a long film like this, that wouldn't stand a chance. And since the runtime got to be 148 minutes, which is the equivalent of 2 hours and 28 minutes, that would have probably taken me 5 or 6 years just to make alone. So that wouldn't have stand a chance. And I was drawing the characters, and the idea popped into my head. Once they were drawn out, I added colour to them and cut them out, and that's what struck me. I did experimenting in this on the previous feature, so maybe I can do the same with this one. The main idea for the animation style in this film was to use cut-out figures as puppets, moving them each frame so that the stop-motion animation would make it move like that, and they could have little mouths that were cut out in different shapes. So I made that change every time they talk. And the way I did that was I would move the character slightly, put a mouth on, take a picture, move it slightly, take the mouth off, put another one on, and so on. And like every film, it needs to have a background to work in. So for the backgrounds and the characters, I started drawing some backgrounds which I got inspired from doing my own minds and looking at real life locations. So I started drawing some backgrounds which could have been done both by hand, and a background being hand drawn in various ways of colours to make the scene. Or the other way of having it done could be through the computer, as that involves getting props and sets into one image as if being photoshopped and looking something like this. And for a couple of parts in the film, there's also going to be music that was used as well. But how did I get inspired to use the music? What inspired me to use music in the film? And when I really think about it, I learned that I took inspiration from some of my favourite musicians, Dick and Bob Sherman, otherwise known as the Sherman Brothers. They wrote a lot of Disney songs back in the 50s and throughout the 60s and onwards for many more years. But I got the inspiration from them as I listened to some of the songs from the feature film, Mary Poppins. When I was listening to that music, something inside hit me. And that was the perfect music to match with the film. It was released in the 60s and Sheldina is set in the 60s, so I thought of it as the perfect match. Started the project, and since it was all based on an experiment, what part of the experiment did I really find to be interesting? Well, it was sort of into mid-September and I was busy at work and planning the designs of what I could attempt to make the characters look like and what the costume designs were going to be. And then it hit me like that. My plan was to think about what the characters could be in costumes that I was going to design. So I spent the following day or 2 days finding costumes I needed, thanks to Mum for helping me search her wardrobes. I managed to find a few clothes that I needed. There was also help from charity shops. They provided the clothes I was looking for. Then the following day I returned to college and was ready to start work with my classmates and to make sure what the designs could look like when it went from there. And comparing it from the original pencil sketches, we went into the dark room. There was me, my tutor, and a classmate who provided the voices for one of the characters. I had her dress in the clothes and a wig as one of the characters that was going to be the inspiration for one character. And then I started taking some photos on a black and white negative 35mm film. So we got the film developed, and when I got it back, I had to look at it and I was surprised. And if I look over here, this right here would happen to be a 35mm camera. That right there. Except there was a sort of like a manual one where you have the little switch on there as you take the picture and then you move it that way with your thumb. I got the film back and I was really interested about how these cameras worked. And then after that, I started getting interested in film cameras, like photography. And I was happy with it, but what I didn't know from that point was I would basically want to start using Kodak film like this and planning it in my other features and projects. Just like one of my favourite directors, Christopher Nolan. As you can tell, I've taken a lot of inspiration from him while I was doing my research. And there were parts where I found out some good facts about him and what he was basically good at. Some of those skills that he uses, I used for some of mine as well. Like when he shoots a film, he always shoots on 70mm and 70mm IMAX film, and he's done that for many years. And for something like that, that is something I could hopefully do one day, shoot a project on film, and with enough hope and enough expectations, anything could happen. And by just hoping that'll happen one day, and what I want to plan to do just like him, it always turns out in a way I want. I get my ideas from other directors. Well, for this main part of the project, when I was doing my research, I realised that for this whole film alone, I've taken inspiration from my favourite directors, and I've learned that I have a bit of them in me that would make this feature. And how would that be possible? Well, if you put it this way, the interest of Walt Disney, as he's mainly the reason I became a cartoonist in the first place and started making animations, and I've had that feeling since 2019. When I first saw the live-action remake of Dumbo back in 2019 of that year, that led to me making my first feature film, which was Dumbo basically. And after I saw the live-action Dumbo just 7 years ago, I felt so inspired by the story, it made me want to do my own version. So the idea popped into my head and I started writing my own story about it. And I started experimenting by filming things, writing a story for it. And it followed to be an animated feature. And while it wouldn't turn out to be great, it was definitely a start for me and definitely a way for me to get started with my first feature. And I had that film released on the internet on the 29th of May 2021. And this year happens to be 2026, so celebrating the 5-year anniversary of that film. Then, in that same year, just 2 months before the film would be released, that's when the idea popped into my head for an animated feature to be released in 2024. There was a lot of inspiration and research that went into work before this film. From March 2021, I had the idea for an animated feature that got me inspired by one of my favourites. I spent 3 days writing the story, and after that the animation process began. I spent a lot of time doing the drawings, the animations, and I just got so deep into it. I started drawing every frame by hand and making it move into the film. I would even work on this film even late into the day and going all the way out at night, as it would be 12 hours a day. I would even do some of the sketches every morning before school, and as soon as I got straight home, it was straight here and straight back to sketches. And to keep me going, to keep me encouraged, there would also be many hours of watching Disney documentaries on how their films are made and how the techniques were done. I would spend hours watching those and how it inspires me, like what I would do for my next features and projects. And after 3 hard years of work on the project, the film was finished and it was released at the local theatre in Barmouth. The film was shown to some of you and becoming my second feature to be released. And getting over 100 positive reviews from friends, family and strangers as well. It just made me feel inspired by that, and it just felt so good to do something like that. And then after that, I would lead on to work on the next feature project, and that next project being Sheldina. Another inspiration I took for the making of this film was some inspiration from the one and only famous Steven Spielberg. A lot of people know that Spielberg is famous for his very successful films such as E.T. and Jurassic Park. But for the big inspiration I took from him was from one of his latest films called The Fabelmans. And it was also considered to be an absolute favourite of mine. And what about this film is what gave me inspiration? Well, I have done research on Spielberg and what he is about. It turns out that The Fabelmans tells the story of Spielberg's childhood. And every time I watch it, it's just inspiring, the music and everything about it. But what about the inspiration from the film is the time period. While Sheldina is set in 1961, The Fabelmans also takes place around that era of the 60s. And when I look over my notes, I learned that what Spielberg did for this film, how he was telling a true story of his childhood through this film. And what I'm also doing is telling my own story of that time period through this film. So right there, we have a connection. By looking at this familiar face, we all know who's the mastermind of this film, so he's done. This is James Cameron, the one who created the highly successful film Avatar. But how did I take inspiration from James Cameron and Avatar to make the film? And what kind of CGI did I use to make the film feel like something like this? I was working on this part of my final major project in college. I wanted to make a teaser trailer for it, and I had the original pencil sketch drawings of the characters, so they were put into a computer and they were drawn over, added with colour, and they ended up looking like this. What you've also seen in cardboard cutouts from the posters. So the backgrounds and characters were put into an editing software on the computer, and there was a camera that would detect your face and whichever way you move and how it would talk. And it would copy that as well. So the process to make the trailer was something similar of how Avatar was made. Thing can be done with the backgrounds. Like I mentioned earlier, I made some of the backgrounds with the computer and created some of the environments in the world for the film. James did the same thing when he was making Avatar and making the worlds look like this. I took inspiration from him and ended up doing the same. While most of the backgrounds were done using pencils and colours, and some of them ended up being real as well, I use these type of backgrounds in certain sequences and only placing characters in a world like this and having that feeling of knowing what they are meant to be. And when you look at it, you can really see how I wanted the characters to be in this. Most of the same process was used again for something similar like this to be used in the scene later, because in the trailer we can see a shot of these two characters in a restaurant. A scene was experimented with. I used one of my classmates to play a waitress in the film. It was filmed live action with a green screen and a special app software that was used. The app would make the live character look cartoonized, and the effects in this shot, it just gives you that Avatar feeling, and even for the end credits too. When you see it for yourself, you'll understand. At the end of Avatar 2, when I heard the song play in the credits, I could just feel it and think of how I could have that song feeling in the same place. So after hearing that song multiple times, I went ahead to create something like that, and when the credits start to play, you'll hear that song too. And even hearing it as well, you'll have that same feeling I had when I heard that song for the first time. Finally, the last piece of my inspiration to be part of this project is Christopher Nolan. How did Chris inspire me for this project? Well, like I mentioned earlier, when I was experimenting with the project in college for photography days, I had a classmate dress in one of the characters I designed, and I had a 35mm camera, and my tutor was there supervising as I was taking pictures. And when I got the film back after it was developed, I had a look at it and I was surprised by how it turned out. Plus after that, I started doing research on how film was used back then and how it's compared to today. And when I was doing research on Chris, I learned that he shoots all of his films on 70mm and of how it's used in IMAX. I found that to be very interesting, and in his most recent film of a biopic, Oppenheimer, I found out a lot more about that and how he did all of that, and it made me think that I could do something like that one day. So that's why one day, if I was to work on a new project, I would feel most ambitious about experimenting and further putting more heart and soul into it. I might do the same way that Chris does and shoot every frame of that next feature film to be on film, and possibly make a big change for the future. I could actually be making something new for me to work with, and doing that, it could also be a challenge to make. But by doing that, I could also be making the impossible possible. Now that I have finished making Sheldina, the big question is, what would I do next? Well, at the minute, I'm not really sure what the next feature is going to be next, because at the moment, this is the 5th feature film that I have produced, with over 100 more in the works of being planned. Most of you have seen all the works that I've done in the past, and I've had my ways of getting them out there to you all. It would either be on the internet, or on the big screen, or just shown in another way. And it's always been my intentions to have films released in a way that I would feel would be the most suitable for it. Because for most of you who knew me growing up between 2016 and 2017, I was obsessed with cinemas and films. And I was between the ages of 9 and 10 at the time. I was obsessed with making those films, and I also used to make a homemade cinema in my bedroom, which used to be like that many years ago, but is not anymore. Back on that now, I see that as a treasured memory, and I will always be looking at that at the present moment. This is all real, making a big film like this and having it shown to the world as a real audience. As I will continue to plan and do many more like this for years to come, I may not always have the right idea of what's going to be next, right as soon as this one is complete. Well, in fact, I'm always coming up with lots of new ideas. If it was either going to be a comedy, if it was going to be an action-adventure film, plus a new animation or horror. There's also a drama or a musical, and if I was going to work on one of those, I would keep it saved in my notes, and I would think about how I could turn it into something that all of us would love to see. Even if I was working on little internet and TV series, or even if I was working somewhere else, I would always keep myself busy by keeping new ideas in my mind. And I see that as a good thing, because I've learned a lot over the years. Just starting out as 2 little ideas 7 years ago, and comparing it to now with over 100 ideas in mind. And I am willing to attempt that in the future with all of those different genres. Whatever I decide to do next, I'm going to make sure that we'll all be there to see it, even if we're together as a family event or we're just far away apart, and we'll be able to see it streaming from our homes like this. I will always make sure that it comes of this. You will think of this something in the future as a step up from the last one, and thinking there is a future for all of this as well. Watching my new film series on the big screens or on your screens at home will be remembering special times like this, as they create special memories for all of us when we gather together for new memories like these, and there will be many more coming like these for many years to come. That right there, everyone, is how I came of making Sheldina, and how I got inspired by other directors. Starting out as a little college project from September 23, and then spending a maximum of 3 months writing the story, shooting the animation from March 2024 to August 2025, and from there spending 9 months in post-production and having the film finished to be here with us today. I see that as something special, and for all of us seeing this new Sheldina film, it is definitely something we won't forget. And that is how I came about with making Sheldina. Thank you.